Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Radhika Tvam Namostute Radhika Tvam Namostute. Hare Krishna.
Vishnu Raj. Ask.
Nectar of Devotion, Chapter 16, Spontaneous Devotion, further described. So, what we have seen up till now is Kamarupa Bhakti. Now, sorry?
Only question. Yeah, kuch.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's okay, Prabhuji. I'll ask later. I mean, it's not related to this one.
Okay. So now, Srila Rupa Goswami Pad is going to explain about the Sambandha Rupa Bhakti. He says, Premaiva Gopa Ramanam Kama Ityagamatam Ratham Itya Uddhavadayo Api Etam Vanchati Bhagavata Priyaha Kama Praya Rathi Kintu Ubjam Yam Eva Sammata. Even this particular love that gopis they have for Krishna is aspired by the great devotees like Uddhava. Then further he said, Sambandha Rupa. Sambandha Rupa Govinde Pitruttvadya Vimanita Apotra Lakshana Taya Vrashninam Vallava Mataha. Yadaisha Jnana Shunyatvadesham Rage Pradhanata Kama Sambandha Rupete Prema Matra Swarupake. Nitya Siddhashrayataya Na Atra Samyagvicharite Ragatmikaya Vai Vidhyad Dvidha Raganugas Chasaha Kamanugacha Sambandhanugacha Eti Nigatyate. In the attitude of the denizens of Vrindavan, such as Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, is to be found in the ideal transcendental concept of being the father and mother of Krishna, the original personality of a Godhead. Factually, one can become the father or mother of Krishna. But a devotee's possession of such a transcendental feeling is called love of Krishna in parental relationship. The Vrishnis, Krishna's relatives at Dwarka, also felt like that. So spontaneous love of a Krishna in parental relationship is found both among those denizens of Dwarka who belong to the dynasty of Vrishni and among the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Spontaneous love of Krishna as exhibited by the Vrishnis and denizens of Vrindavan is eternally existing in them. In the stage of devotional service, where regulative principles are followed, there is no necessity of discussing this love, for it must develop of its at a more advanced stage. You can't pretend or you can practice this. It comes automatically. It is a spontaneous. So what is the eligibility for spontaneous devotional service? Persons desiring to follow in footsteps of such a eternal devotee of Lord as the Vrishnis and Vrindavan denizens are called Raganuga devotees, which means that they are trying to attain to the perfection of those devotees. These Raganuga devotees do not follow the regulative principles of devotional service very strictly, but by spontaneous nature they become attracted to some of the eternal devotees such as Nanda or Yashoda, and they try to follow their footsteps spontaneously. There is a gradual development of the ambition to become like a particular devotee, and this activity is called Raganuga. We must always remember, however, that such a eagerness to follow in the footsteps of the denizens of Braja is not possible unless one is freed from material contamination. In following the regulative principles of a devotional service, there is a stage called Anarutha Nivritti, which means the disappearance of all material contaminations. Sometimes someone is found imitating such a devotional love, but factually he is not freed from anarthas or unwanted habits. It has been seen that a so-called devotee proclaims himself a follower of Nanda, Yashoda, or the gopis, while at the same time his abominable attraction for mundane sex life is visible. Such a manifestation of a divine love is mere imitation and has no value. When one is actually spontaneously attracted to the loving principle of the gopis, there will be found no trace of any mundane contamination in his character. Therefore, in the beginning, everyone should strictly follow the regulative principles of devotional service, according to injunctions of the scriptures and the spiritual master. Only after the stage of a liberation from material contamination can one actually aspire to follow the footsteps of the devotees in Vrindavan. It is said by Srila Rupa Goswami, when one is actually liberated from the material contamination, he can always remember an eternal devotee in Vrindavan in order to love Krishna in the same capacity. And developing such an aptitude, one will always live in Vrindavan, even within his mind. The purport is that if it is possible, one should go and physically be present at Brajabhumi, Vrindavan, and be engaged in always in the service of the Lord, following the devotees in the Brajadam, the spiritual realm of Braja. If it is not possible, however, to be physically present at Vrindavan, one can meditate anywhere upon living in that situation. Wherever he may be, one must always think about life in Brajadham and about following in the footsteps of a particular devotee in the service of the Lord. Ragatmika kanishta ye brajavasi janadaya tesham bhavaptaye lubdho bhavitra adhikaravan tad bhava adhimadhurye shrute dhirya apekshate न अत्र शास्त्रम न युक्तिम च तल्लोभो उत्पत्ति लक्षणम वैद भक्त्याधिकारी तो भाव विभावनावधिः अत्र शास्त्रम तथा तर्कम अनुकूलम अपेक्षते कृष्णं स्मरणं जनम चास्य प्रेष्ठं निज संहितम तत् कथा तच्चासो कुर्याद्वासं प्रजे सदा सेवा साधक रूपेण सिद्ध रूपेण चात्र ही तत्र भाव विलुप्सानां कार्या व्रजलोकानुसारतः श्रवणोत् कीर्तनोत् आदिनी वैद्य भुक्त्यादिनी तो या अन्य अंगानि च तान्य अत्र विज्ञेयानि मनीषिभिः. So it's very important what has explained here by Srila Rupa Goswami. He says that if someone wants to really have this particular mode of worship to their lordship, then you should go and associate with such a kind of devotees who are having those feelings, those bhava, those emotions for their lordship. And where you can find them, that will be in only Vrindavan. Because in the Vrajadham, you will see those devotees who are like a Krishnaika Smaranam. They are always meditating on the Lord. And lolupata, the greediness, for the service of the Lord. If that is there, and Prabhupada clearly mentions here that one should be freed from the mundane sex desire or lust, because that is the great impediment in developing proper bhava for their lordship. And that's why Srila Narottam Das Thakur says, Vishaya Vasana Chadi Shuddha Habe Man, Tabe Hame Hirabo Shri Vrindavan. When my mind is freed from Vishaya Vasana, then only I can able to see Haribo Shri Vrindavan. Then I will be able to see the Vrindavan. And what is the best thing for that? Seva sadhaka rupena siddha rupena chatrata. You can perform your service as a sadhaka, and Lord will accept it when you become perfected in that. And what you have to there? Then Vrajaloka Nusarataha. You should follow the footsteps of Vraja. And that's what Lord is expecting from us. Sarva dharmana parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. Like a Vrajavasis, you take shelter of me. And what is the best way? Shravana Kirtana Adi. So for that, you have to sit there and hear more about that. Do the Kirtana of their Lordship. Glorify Him. Glorify His Rupa, Guna, and His pastimes. Kamanugat bhavet trishna kamarupa anugamini sambhoge shamaye tad bhave ichchatatmeti sadvidha keli tatparyatvaye sambhoge ichchayami bhavet tad ichcha atmika tasam bhava madhurya kam etihi Shri Murter Madhurim Prekshatal Leela Nishamyava Tad Bhavang Chiniye Syutashu Sadhana Tanyo Purane Shruyate Padme Pumsam Api Bhavadiyaha. A devotee who is actually advanced in Krishna consciousness, who is constantly engaged in devotional service, should not manifest himself even though he has attained their perfection. The idea is that he should always continue to act as a neophyte devotee as long as his material body is there. Activities in devotional service under regulative principle must be followed even by the pure devotee. But when he realizes his actual position in relationship with the Lord, he can, along with the discharging of regulative service, think within himself of serving the Lord under the guidance of a particular associate of the Lord and develop his transcendental sentiments in the following that associate. In this connection, we should be careful about so-called Siddha Pranali. There is a group of devotees who preached about this Siddha Pranali. Siddha Pranali process is followed by a class of men who are not very authorized and who have manufactured their own way of a devotional service. They imagine that they have become associate of the Lord simply by thinking of themselves like that. This external behavior is not at all according to the regulative principles. The so-called Siddha Pranali process is followed by the Prakrita Sahajiyas, a pseudo-sect of so-called Vaishnavas. In the opinion of Rupa Goswami, such activities are a simply disturbance to the standard way of a devotional service. Rupa Goswami says that learned acharyas recommended that learned acharyas recommend that we follow the regulative principles even after the development of a spontaneous love for Krishna. According to the regulative principles, there are 9 departmental activities as described above, and one should specifically engage himself in the type of devotional service for which he has a natural attitude. For example, one person may have a particular interest in hearing, another may have a particular interest in chanting, and another may have a particular interest in serving the temple. So these or any of the other 6 different types of devotional service, remembering, serving, praying, engaging in some particular service, being in a friendly relationship, or offering everything in one's possession, should be executed in full earnestness. In this way, everyone should act according to his particular taste. So now he is going to explain the Kamanuga, that is conjugal love. He has explained right now about Sambandha Rupa, now Kamanuga. Kamanuga Bhavet Krishna Kamarupanugamini. Devotional service following in the footsteps of gopis of Vrindavan or the queens at Dwarka is called devotional service in conjugal love. This devotional service in conjugal love can be divided into 2 categories. One is indirect conjugal love, the other direct. Sambhoga Ichamai and Tad Bhava Ichatmevi. That is Vipralamba and Sambhoga. In both of these categories, one has to follow the particular gopi who is engaged in such a service in Golok Vrindavan. To be directly attached to the Supreme Personality of a Godhead in conjugal love is technically called Keli. This Keli performance means to directly enjoy with the Supreme Personality of a Godhead. There are other devotees who do not wish direct contact with the Supreme Person, but who relish the conjugal loving affair of the Lord with the gopis. Such a devotees enjoy simply by hearing of the activities of the Lord with the gopis. This development of a conjugal love can be possible only with those who are already engaged in the following the regulative principles of the devotional service. Specifically in the worship of Radha and Krishna in temple, such a devotees gradually develop a spontaneous love for the deity. And by hearing of the Lord's exchange of loving affairs with the gopis, they gradually become attracted to this pastime. After this spontaneous attraction becomes highly developed, the devotee is placed in there of the above mentioned categories. This development of a conjugal love for Krishna is not manifested in women only. The material body has nothing to do with the spiritual loving affairs. A woman may develop an attitude of becoming a friend of Krishna, and similarly, a man may develop the feature of becoming a gopi in Vrindavan. How a devotee in the form of a man can desire to become a gopi is stated in the Padma Puran as follows. पुरा महर्षयः सर्वे दण्डकारण्यवासिनः दृष्ट्वा रामं हरि तत्र भोक्तुम् इच्छेन सुविग्रहम्. ते सर्वस्त्रीत्व आपन्नाः समुद्भूताश्च गोकुले हरिं सम्प्राप्य कामेन ततो मुक्त्वा भवार्णवात्. In days gone by, there were many sages in Dandakaranya. Dandakaranya is the name of forest where Lord Ramachandra lived after being banished by his father for 14 years. At that time, there were many advanced sages who were captivated by the beauty of Lord Ramachandra and who desired to become women in order to embrace the Lord. Later on, these sages appeared in Gokul, Vrindavan, when Krishna adventured himself there. And they were born as gopis or girlfriends of Krishna. In this way, they attained the perfection of spiritual life. Te sarvam stritvam samudbhutasya gokule. Harim samprapya kamena tato muktva bhavana. So that's why there are many categories of gopis in Vrindavan. They were like Mithila gopis, Ayodhya gopis, Dandakaranya gopis, then Shruti gopis, Gandharva gopis, Apsaras gopis. Whoever desired the feminine love for the Lord, they all took the women form and took birth in Gokul too. And it said that Hari Samprapta Kamina, in that way they attended their lordship and attended the perfection of spiritual life. The story of sages of Dandakaranya can be explained as follows. When the Lord Ramachandra was residing in Dandakaranya, the sages who were engaged in the devotional service there became attracted by his beauty and immediately thought of the gopis at Vrindavan, who enjoyed conjugal loving affection with Krishna. In this instance, it is clear that the sages of Dandakaranya desired conjugal love in manner of the gopis, although they were well aware of a supreme Lord as both Krishna and Lord Ramachandra. They knew that although Ramachandra was an ideal king and could not accept more than one wife, Lord Krishna, being the full-fledged personality of a Godhead, could fulfill the desires of all of them in Vrindavan. These sages also concluded that the form of Lord Krishna is more attractive than that of Lord Ramachandra, and so they prayed to become gopis in future lives to be associated with Krishna. Lord Ramachandra remained silent, and his silence shows that he accepted the prayers of the sages. Thus, they were blessed by the Lord Ramachandra to have association with Lord Krishna in their future lives. As a result of this benediction, they all took birth as a women in the wombs of gopis at Gokul, and as they had desired in their previous lives, they enjoyed the company of Lord Krishna, who was present at that time in Gokul Vrindavan. The perfection of their human form of a life was thus achieved by their generating a transcendental sentiment to share conjugal love with Lord Krishna. Conjugal love is divided into two classifications, namely conjugal love as a husband and wife, and conjugal love as lover and beloved. One who develops a conjugal love for Krishna as a wife is promoted to Dwarka, where the devotee becomes the queen of the Lord. One who develops conjugal love for Krishna as a lover is promoted to Goloka Vrindavan to associate with the gopis and enjoy loving affairs with Krishna there. We should note carefully, however, that this conjugal love for Krishna, either as a gopi or as a queen, is not limited only to women. Even men can develop such sentiments, as was evidenced by the sages in Dandakaranya. If someone simply desires conjugal love but does not follow in the footsteps of gopis, he is promoted to association with the Lord at Dwaraka. In the Mahakurma Puran, it is stated, Agniputra Mahatmanas tapasastritvam pire bhartarim cha jagatyonim vasudevam ajam vivo. Great sages who were the sons of fire gods rigidly followed the regulative principle in their desire to have a conjugal love for Krishna. As such, in their next lives, they were able to associate with the Lord, the origin of all creation, who is known as a Vasudeva or a Krishna, and all of them got him as their husband. So this is what a Kamanuga is. Then again, further, he explains about Sambandhanuga, parenthood or friendship. Sa Sambandhanuga Bhakti Prochate Sathiratmani Ya Pitruttvadi Sambandham मननारोपणात्मिकः लुब्धैर्वात्सल्य सख्यादौ भक्ति कार्य अत्र साधकैः ब्रजेन्द्र सुबलादीनां भावचेष्टित समुदया तथा हि श्रूयते शास्त्रे कश्चित् कुरुपुरी स्थितः नंदसुनोर अधिष्ठानं तत्र पुत्रतया भजन् नारदस्य उपदेशेन सिद्धो अभूद वृद्धवार्धकीः. Devotees who are attracted to Krishna as parents or as a friend should follow in the footsteps of Nanda Maharaj and or Subala respectively. Nanda Maharaj is the foster father of Krishna, and out of all the friends of Krishna, Subal is the most intimate in Vrajabhumi. In the development of becoming either the father or a friend of the Lord, there are two varieties. One method is that one may try to become the father of the Lord directly, and the other is that one may follow the Nanda Maharaj and cherish the ideal of being a Krishna's father. Out of these two, the attempt to directly become the father of Krishna is not recommended. Such a development can become polluted with Mayavad, impersonal philosophy. The Mayavadis or a monist think that they themselves are Krishna, and if one thinks that he himself has become Nanda Maharaj, then his parental love will become contaminated with the Mayavad philosophy. The Mayavad philosophical way of thinking is offensive, and no offender can enter into the kingdom of God to associate with Krishna. In Skanda Puran, there is a story of an old man residing in Hastinapur, capital of a kingdom of Pandus, who desired Krishna as his beloved son. This old man was instructed by Narada to follow the footsteps of Nanda Maharaj, and thus he achieved a success. There is a statement in the Narayana Vyuha, Stava, prayers that persons who are always engaged in thinking of the Lord as their husband, friend, father, or well-wisher are always worshipable by everyone. This spontaneous love for Krishna can be developed only by special mercy of a Krishna. पति पुत्र श्रद्ध भ्रातृ प्रेतृत्व मित्रन्वद हरिम ये ध्यायन्ति सदोद्युक्तः तेभ्यो अपिह नमो नमः. This spontaneous love of Krishna can be developed only by the mercy of Krishna or his pure devotees. This process of devotional service is sometimes called Pushti Marga. Pushti means nourishing and Marga means path. Such a development of a sentiment nourishes devotional service to the highest standard. Thus, it is called the path of nourishment or a Pushti Marga. The Vallabha Sampradaya, which belongs to the Vishnu Swami sect of Vaishnava religion, worship Krishna in this Pushti Marga. Generally, devotees in Gujarat worship Bala Krishna under the heading of Pushti Marga. Any question?
No problem.
See, having a Laddu Gopal is the path of Pushti Marga, where they consider Krishna as their son and they try to nourish that particular path to worship their Lord. And for us, Gaudiyas, is Radha Krishna, Krishna Balaram, because we try to become his friend or the paramour.
Mhm.
Make sense?
Yes, sir.
So whom you worship at home, that shows your particular bhava for their lordship. So the next part is ecstatic love. By the process of executing regulative devotional service, one is actually elevated unto the transcendental stage beyond the material modes of nature. At that time, one's heart becomes illuminated like the sun. The sun is far above the planetary system, and there is no possibility of its being covered by any kind of a cloud. Similarly, when a devotee is purified like the sun, from his pure heart there is a diffusion of ecstatic love, which is more glorious than the sunshine. Only at that time is the attachment to Krishna perfect. Spontaneously, the devotee becomes eager to serve the Lord in his ecstatic love. At this stage, the devotee is on the platform of love, of a Uttamadhikari, perfect devotion. Such a devotee has no hesitation from material affections and is interested only in the service of Radha and Krishna. To clarify, in the previous chapters, the symptoms of devotional service were explained along with the instruction as to how we may execute devotional service with our present sense and gradually rise to the platform of ecstasy in spontaneous love. And the two kinds of devotional service, namely the devotional service through regulative principles and through spontaneous love, were discussed. Vaidimarga and Raganuga. Within the stage of the regulative principles of a devotional service, there are two divisions, namely executive and effective. This effective portion of a devotional service is called bhava or ecstasy. In this connection, there is a statement in the Tantras that ecstasy is the first symptom of a pure love for the personality of Godhead. शुद्ध सत्वम विशेषात्मा प्रेम सूर्यान शु साम्य भाग रुचिभिः चित्त मासृण्यस हृदौसो भाव उच्यते. In Tantra, it is said, Premnastu prathamavastha bhavam ityabhidhiyate. There is a statement in the Tantras that ecstasy is the first symptom of pure devotee. Premnastu prathama avastha of bhava. In that stage, one is sometimes found shedding tears of shivering. Not always are these symptoms manifested, but occasionally. When King Ambarish was put into difficulty by Durvasa, he began to think of the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus there were some changes in his body, and tears were falling from his eyes. These symptoms are activities of ecstasy. They are visible in the shivering of the body and the shedding of tears. After the outward appearance of these ecstatic symptoms, they stay within the mind, and continuation of this ecstasy is called samadhi. This stage of appreciation becomes the cause of future exchange of a loving affairs with the Krishna. Elevation to this stage of ecstasy can be possible in two ways. One way is by constant association with the pure devotees. The other way is by the special mercy of a Krishna or by the mercy of a pure devotee of a Krishna. Elevation to the ecstatic stage of a life is generally attained through association with the pure devotees, while elevation to the stage by the special mercy of Krishna or his devotee is very rare. This is very important. Elevation to the ecstatic stage of life is generally attained through association with the pure devotees, while elevation to the stage by the special mercy of Krishna or devotee is very rare. The purpose is that one should execute devotional service rigidly in the association of devotees so that there will be certainty in raising oneself to that ecstatic position. In special cases, of course, there is a special favor from Krishna, and although we should always expect that, we should not still idly and simply wait for Krishna's special mercy. The regular duties must be performed. It is just as when sometimes it is found that a person who never attended school or college may be recognized as a great scholar, or an honorary degree from great university may be offered to him. But this does not mean that one should avoid school and expect to automatically receive an honorary degree from some universities. Similarly, one should devotedly execute the regulative principles of devotional service and at the same time hope for Krishna's favor or for his devotees' favor. That's why the whole system of ours is depends upon the mercy of their lordship and devotees of their lord. An example of rising to the stage of ecstatic love by executing the regulative principles of devotional service is given in the life story of Narada, which is described to Vyasadeva in Srimad Bhagavatam. Narada tells thereof his previous life and how he developed to the stage of ecstatic love. He was hmm. Narada tells there was his previous life and how he developed to the stage of ecstatic love. He was engaged in the service of the great devotee and used to hear their talks and songs. Because he had the opportunity to hear these pastimes and songs of Krishna from the mouths of the pure devotee, he became very attracted within his heart. Because he had become eager to hear these topics, he gradually developed within himself an ecstatic love for Krishna. This ecstatic love is prior to the pure love of Krishna, because in the next verse, Narada confirms that by gradual process of hearing from great sages, he developed love of Godhead. In that connection, Narada continues to say in the first canto, 5th chapter, text number 28, first I passed my days in the association of a great sages during the rainy autumn season. Every morning and evening, I heard them while they were singing and chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, and thus my heart gradually became purified. As soon as I heard them with a great attention, the influence of the modes of material ignorance and passion disappeared, and I became firmly fixed in the devotional service to the Lord. So we'll stop here and continue after in the next session. Okay?
Okay, Prabhuji.
Maybe abruptly, but we continue the same verse in next session.
Yes, Prabhuji.